Hey, how in the world are you doing? I am so glad that you've joined us here for another podcast. I do this on my dear friends, all right? And I try to do it factually. So sit back and enjoy what we're going to do on the great Mel Tillis.
Welcome to Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music with your host, multi-award-winning music producer, Eddie Kilroy. And now, here's your host, Eddie Kilroy.
Hey there. Good golly, Miss Molly. We're having a good time and we haven't even started yet. I'm excited because I do these on people, probably 90% of what I've done are on artists that were personally my dear friends. 4 decades in Nashville, a close-knit music community at that time where we were all friends. We all kind of hung out. We did our music. We did our work. But some of us said, including me, I can't believe they're paying us for doing this because it's so much darn fun. When you're new into it, you're just saying, wow, we're having fun. But Mel Tillis, I wanted to talk about him because there was a handful of stars up there, a lot of good ones. Mel kind of stood out because of his personality, not only his talent, because trust me, he was one talented cat. Mel would craft a song, but I'm going to go back a little bit earlier on Mel Tillis to show some of his character, okay? He was born in a little town called Dover. Well, actually, that's not a lie. You fact check me on that and you'll say, Kilroy, you're lying. His home was in Dover, Florida, which was nearby, maybe 20 miles or so from Tampa. And when his mother gave birth, it happened in Tampa. So he was born in Tampa, but he always called Dover home. And he had a deep, deep love for the state of Florida, which, he and I talked about that a lot because of my innate love for my Lone Star State, the great state of Texas. And he had the same feeling about the great state of Florida. But Mel was in the Air Force, and I guess it just had this idea, I want to play guitar. And he got a cheap guitar, like most of us did when we started playing guitar. He learned to play guitar in the Navy. And when he got back, he had to go to work. He said, where am I going to go to work? Because I want to do some music too, and I'm not advanced enough to get a job. So he landed a job with the railroad company that went to Nashville. They had to run to Nashville. So while working for them, Mel could get a free ride to Nashville. So for a long time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, I know he told me it was a long time, that he would ride the train to Nashville, go to a place called Cedarwood Music, which was at that time one of the better publishing companies in Nashville. And he met Jim Denny, who owned the Cedarwood. Webb Pierce was hanging out there, all the old country artists. And he got to hanging out with some writers. And, you just don't sit down and write a song. A song has to be crafted properly. And you're not a songwriter anymore. You're a song craftsman. It has to be put together right. I use the analogy of an author that writes books, okay? He's got that much paper to tell a story on. Now, in a song, you have to have a story. And the story ends, the story has a middle, and then it, of course, started back there before it ended, where most things do. But he's only got 3 to 3.5 minutes tops to tell that whole story. So it's a matter of crafting it properly, coming up with the melody, and Mel was absolutely, he got to that point where it was like a piece of cake, man. He could knock out a song, and a good one, so quick, man, it'd make you kiss a duck. It was some kind of guy. And he got into a lot of different things. He was, I got one story I want to tell about Mel is I went to Nashville, and like most, I was low on money. I was not completely broke, but man, I was getting really close to it. And I had a fine, I think it was a D26 Martin guitar, which was kind of the El Dorado of guitars in that day. And Mel had already made a little money off writing. I said, Mel, I need some money. Do you need another guitar? He said, Lord, no, Kilroy, I don't need another guitar, but I'll buy yours if it helps you out. So he did, and I appreciated that. And, Lord, I wanted that guitar back later on. And Mel's Mel's house burned down, his log house out in Brentwood, and he lost everything. But at that time, I did not know. And I said, Mel, I would like to buy that guitar that I sold to you when I was on Hard Times. He said, Kilroy, I'd sell it back to you in a minute. Matter of fact, I'd probably just give it back to you. But it burned up in the fire, and he felt bad about that. But worst of all, he was devastated that Tommy Jackson's fiddle burned up in that house fire. Mel had a log house, and his wife had left some grease on the stovetop, and it burned and caught the house on fire. In those days, they didn't have any retardant to treat the logs, a fire retardant, and it just, boom, it just went up in smoke. He got out in his boxer shorts, and it burned Tommy Jackson's fiddle. What does that mean? Tommy Jackson was the premier fiddle player for 2 decades in Nashville. If you heard a fiddle on a record out of Nashville in the 50s and early 60s, Ray Price, Crazy Arms, Ernest Tubb, Walking the Floor Over You, da-da-da-da-da-da, goes on and on. Tommy Jackson was considered the king of the fiddle. So I don't know how Mel ended up with the fiddle. Maybe he bought it from the heirs or something, but he was really proud to have it. Doggone, it burned up in the fiddle. That really hurted him. And Mel got a lot of recognition, and it was all deserved because he came from the bottom up. He scratched his way up, just like everybody does when they get into country music. And he got a lot of accolades. He had, he had that National Medal of the Arts. Some president hung that thing on a blue ribbon over Mel's neck. I want to say, and I stand corrected on this, okay? But I'm saying this because the president I'm speaking of loved country music. So I got a suspicion it could have been G.W. Bush, but I don't recall. Check me on that. I may be way, way off. But Mel wrote some great songs. I mean, gosh, he wrote I Ain't Never. Webb Pierce had a #1 country record. I don't know if you know Webb Pierce. He was long, long ago, but he was a really, really big act. And he had I Ain't Never, a song that Mel wrote, and Mel wrote so many good songs. Hey, he wrote Charlie Pride's first hit. Well, not first hit, first recording that became a hit called Snakes Crawl at Night. That was a good song. And nobody wanted to really bring a song for him because they didn't know that Charlie was black. But they would get some songs. Mel was the first to pitch to a black country singer named Charlie Pride. And then Mel Tillis had some movies too. I can't remember. Hold up, let the old mind work. It was either 80 or 81, could have been 79. I think it was 81. He was in that movie with Burt Reynolds called Cannonball Run. Terry Bradshaw. Oh, I love Terry Bradshaw. I think he's the greatest quarterback that the Pittsburgh Steelers ever had. And funny, he and Tilly together were a total riot. But there was some good. Jerry Reed was in that movie too, I think. And then Coca-Cola Cowboy, another #1 record that Mel Tillis had, was the record that the great actor Clint Eastwood had in there. Coca-Cola Cowboy. I'm just a Coca-Cola Cowboy. That was Mel Tillis at his best, you know. I think the biggest one, did I mention Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town? No, I didn't. That was what we call in the industry, a monster song, a guerrilla record. I mean, it was so powerful you couldn't hide it and keep it from hitting. That was Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town. Kenny Rogers and the First Edition on a record company called Amos Records out of California were first to record Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town. A year or two goes by, and I was talking to Mel, and I said, what do you got coming up in the future? He said, well, Kilroy, I got to tell you, I think I am going to record that Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town and make a country record out of it, and it may be a hit. I said, it probably will. So he did, and it became a #1 record. Mel did a lot of things, you know. He had Good Woman Blues. That was one of his later records before he passed, and we lost him. Ain't No California. Oh, man. One that's funny, I want you guys to, I don't think it's on the market anymore, but go to YouTube, do whatever online search you can. Find an album called dogs. Shel Silverstein, a writer out of California, he was a strange guy, but he sure could write. And he came up with some great concepts. He came up with and he wrote the whole album to fit the structure of what they were doing. It's called Old Dogs, with Waylon Jennings, Bobby Bare, Jerry Reed. Oh man, it was so funny. There was somebody else in there. Jerry Reed, Bobby Bare, Waylon. Oh, Mel Tillis, of course. That's who that brought it to my mind. Get a copy of Old Dogs with those four guys and get you a beer, cup of coffee, cola, yours, whatever your choice is, and just sit down and listen to that and say, listen to the old dog sing. It was a funny thing. But Mel is, I was talking to, somebody told me that Mel was going into the Country Music Hall of Fame. And I called Mel and I said, Mel, congratulations. You, of all people, deserve to be in the Country Music Hall of Fame. And he said, Kilroy, they gave me a call and I was in my garden and said, Tilly, you're going into the Country Music Hall of Fame. And he said, Kilroy, they told me that and I almost pooped in my pants. And I said, man, that was a shocker. And another story, Mel was full of stories, and we spent a lot of time together. And I value every minute and the memories I have of hanging with Merle and shooting the bull and swapping stories, telling lies, talking about what the government do. It's not the government, it's the government. What the government going to do. Anyway, we'd work out all those problems, and we did it a lot of time. He was telling me a story on a mutual friend, another guy that I was very close to. Very blessed to call him friend because I love to visit with him and think about his mind. And I'm talking about Roger Miller. Before I tell you the rest of the story, I'll tell you what I told Roger one time, because I think he had the greatest mind I ever knew. I told Roger, I said, you know what I would like to do? And he said, what? I said, I'd like to get in your mind and just walk around and look at what's going on. Because Roger could say the darndest thing, but Mel was telling me the story. He said, when Roger was a bellhop, and I refresh you a little bit on that, bellhops in the old days, when you checked in, they had uniforms on, and they would carry your bags. And Roger took the job because most country singers that came to town stayed at that hotel. And he would ride the elevator, carry their bags, and start talking to them about his songs, because Roger was struggling like all of us did when they went to Nashville. And so Mel came on. Mel had been talking to a comic girl, I did comedy, very famous, sweet lady, Minnie Pearl. And Minnie Pearl told Mel, said, I'm looking for a fiddle player. Keep your eye open. So Mel went down to the hotel and he saw Roger and he said, Kilroy, I saw Roger and he was dressed in one of them little old monkey suits that those bellhops wear. And I said, Roger, Minnie Pearl told me she was looking for a fiddle player. Would you like to go to work for you? And Mel said he started jerking that monkey suit off and just throwing it everywhere. And Mel said, wait a minute, Roger, where are you going? He said, Mel, I'm going to give my 2-minute notice. That was so typical Roger. And Mel shared that story with me, and I always thought that was funny. Gosh, it's been a great time visiting about my dear friend Mel Tillis, but comes the time we got to get out of here. But first of all, let me talk about our sponsor. I'm very proud to be associated with this company. It's called Total Feeds, and it is an amazing thing. Dr. Harry Anderson, who I'm proud to also say that he's a friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine, and he, being the doctor and doing all the scientific stuff, one day he said, I want to come up with some good feed. And the first thing I think that he came up with was Total Equine. Now, Total People could have been right along the same time, but we started our barn immediately, our horses, on Total Equine. Then Dr. Harry Anderson said, I see other things out there that need my feed. So he started putting together the formulas for bovine, Total Bull. The bulls that you see on the PBR, not every one of them, I'm sure, but a lot of them are feeding on Total Bovine. And then Total Canine for your dogs. I mean, he's got Total Canine for goats. But rather than me tell you all about it, go to the website, Total Feeds, and There's testimonials on there from a lot of different people. Matter of fact, I think there's a testimonial on there with Liz and I when Dr. Anderson brought out a film crew to look at some of our horses that were on Total Feed and what it done for them, Total Equine. But right now, I'm going to need to saddle up and get out of here. I've been having a ball, and it's just telling stories of my buddy Mel. It is always good to visit and talk about old friends and reminisce about the times you had with them. And it's just a thing we have to do. But right now, I got to saddle up and drip. Bring old paint up. Comes the time for the fall to find, sun to shine, and come on out and stay with us.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music. If you have any thoughts or questions about the content, email them. Kilroy Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. That's Kilroy, no S, Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. And don't forget to subscribe. Third-party use of any part of this podcast without the expressed consent of Eddie Kilroy is prohibited. The Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music podcast is a production of Eddie Kilroy.